You are live.
All right. 3, 2, 1. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another installment of the Zorich, I guess we're calling this podcast or webcast or something like that. This is a kind of a weird situation. I've actually never interviewed my best friend before. So if the questions are a little tame, it's only because I've known him for more than half my life, and he's my best friend. So the good part about this is that we played football together, and so that's why I'm going to interview my best friend. Kind of weird.
You're professional.
Okay, we're talking to the mighty offensive lineman, the University of Notre Dame, Tim Ryan. Went to Rockhurst High School, was a dominant player in high school, and actually, when we got to Notre Dame, you could still dunk a basketball, right?
Yeah, kind of, yeah.
Well, at least after our first year.
Yeah, I don't think I could dunk after I got like over 230 or something, 235.
Yeah, I think it was 235. I think it was more like 250, 260 when you stopped dunking.
Take your version. That's, yeah.
But you were an all-state basketball player, is that correct?
Yeah, I wouldn't fact check that, but yeah.
Well, I think you told me you were an all-state basketball player.
Probably, but
Or maybe it was Vinny Serrato.
Yeah, or Terry Forbes.
All right, I'm sorry. I'm just getting way off case. Okay, so went to school together. Well, I'm sorry. Let me back up a little bit. Let's talk a little bit about Rockhurst High School. I never really knew about Rockhurst until I met you when we got together in high school. You guys were in college. You guys were a pretty dominant team. Can you tell us a little bit about kind of your high school career and your coach?
Yeah, so like you said, I went to Rockhurst High School, which is in Kansas City, Missouri. It's a Jesuit prep. Kansas City is probably about 1 million metro or such. It was I had the opportunity to play for Coach Tony Severino, who just retired this year and is one of the legacy coaches in high school football. But if you remember back in the late 80s, we didn't have TV and all the things in ESPN, so you didn't really know about college or whatever. So, between him and my dad, the influence that they had were, easily the two most influential people at that period of time.
Wow.
What was so great about Rockhurst was it was tough to get through. Now, hope we don't go into a lot of stuff about my grades, but the school was actually it was an all guys school, and I think the easiest class we had was pottery, and so we were very well prepared to go into college. But like you said, we had a really dominant football team, and that Rockhurst High School had a dominant program for years. Coach Sev had taken over for Al Davis, believe it or not, was the athletic director, a real Al Davis.
No way. Are you serious?
Yeah. And so Coach Sev, what freaks me out is, so we won the state championship when we were 1987. He won one in 1985, 1987, and whatever. But he was 37 years old, 38 years old.
Really?
Yeah. And so the craziest is you think back about all the coaches that your high school coaches, and how profound and what an impact. And then I'm like thinking about what I was doing when I was 37 on a Friday night. It's just absolutely remarkable. It just started with character, and Coach Sev was, we definitely were prepared. We had a lot of talent, but it was all about character, and there was a lot of talent for a Midwest Kansas school. We had a lot of successful people come out of that program. So I'm very proud to say that I went to Rockhurst and went and looked at the campus the last time I was home, and it looks like a college.
Really?
Yeah, it's that stuff's getting crazy. Yeah.
I mean, like new buildings, is it starting out or?
Well, they finally got not finally, but they got a stadium that kind of looks like maybe some of those high school stadiums in Texas.
Wow.
And then they really do focus on the arts and some of the different things. But when we graduated in 86, 87, there was no official baseball team. There was no swimming. And since then, they brought those programs on. In fact, David Cohn for the Mets.
Okay.
David Cohn and I think the Cubs. He went to Rockhurst, but didn't play on a Rockhurst high school baseball team.
Wow.
Yeah. So there's a lot of talent going through that school.
So who was your main competitor at Rockhurst?
Um,
Have a rival, or like a good rival, or?
Well, sure. I mean, we lost a couple times there. Back in my day, Shawnee Mission West was always a big rival.
Okay.
And then we actually traveled quite a bit. We went down to Arkansas and some out-of-state stuff.
Really?
Yeah. So,
Wow.
I think Shawnee Mission West would be comparable to like a Penn State type of thing,
Okay.
where you got that kind of rival. They were really good but they were on the Kansas side. So, if you're familiar with Kansas City, it's divided right down the middle, and there is a Kansas City, Kansas side, and there's a very significant, industry and population over there. And so the Kansas City, Kansas schools were, as good as, very, very good public schools.
So, I mean, this is, I'm kind of intrigued a little bit, because I know nowadays, or at least maybe 10 years ago, a lot of high schools would travel around the country, and I didn't realize that schools were doing it like back when we were in high school. Did you guys travel a lot, or was it like 1 or 2 games a year, or?
Yeah, I think 1 or 2. We go down to Arkansas. Rockhurst has been since I've left. It like you're saying, it's gotten more and more prevalent. But
Right.
Back in the day, in the late '80s, we were going down to. I think we went up to Minnesota. I'm not sure about that, but definitely Arkansas, and that was probably the most significant travel.
That had to be cool.
It was very cool.
So these guys are like a huge kind of booster club with parents involved and everything, and were they raising tons of money, or?
Nah, that wasn't really the deal. In fact, when Rockhurst always got accused of recruiting.
Okay.
So again, being raised I lived north of the river, so I lived like 45 minutes away from Rockhurst, and my brother and I we would drive, and we were people were accusing us of being recruited. So in 8th grade, my dad went and talked to Rockhurst and was like, "Hey, go talk. Will you guys say something or whatever?" And they're like, "We don't care. We're not. No,
Wow.
we don't do that." And you remember Kenyon?
Yeah.
Kenyon was a year behind me. Kenyon went on to star at Oklahoma and play in the league for 3 or 4 years. He was kind of in a similar boat because he was such a premier athlete. He was accused of being recruited to Rockhurst and such, and it just wasn't the case. So it just naturally was the best place to go if you wanted to play football. And back then it was private. It was probably a little pricey. The thing about Rockhurst, which was similar to Notre Dame, is a significant portion of the school was on some kind of a scholarship or grant or what have you. So, that opened it up to give somebody a chance. And, Kenyon was a phenomenal example of that as far as, just needed to kind of get in the right surroundings and take off.
Okay, well, we can talk about him later. I'm more concerned about you. So.
But that's a reflection on Rockhurst.
You're at Rockhurst. You're kicking ass. What other schools were you looking at?
So, again, we didn't have ESPN, and you didn't. This thing hadn't taken off like it is now. I always kind of had an affinity for Oklahoma.
Okay.
And I kind of wanted to go there, but my last name is Ryan. We're Irish Catholic, and so. I go down there for a recruiting visit, and I sit in the office with Barry Switzer, and I'm like, "Look, I'd really like to go here, but there's absolutely no chance. My mom, absolutely no chance. So when I get home from the recruiting trip, mom and dad are in the Notre Dame, sweatshirts and all of that kind of stuff. And it wasn't really ever it was a pretty easy decision for me to go to Rockhurst. Specifically, Coach Sev, and I didn't really know Lou Holtz, South Bend, wasn't very familiar with it. And Coach Sev said he'd give his left arm to play for Lou Holtz. So, that really makes it a pretty easy decision, and certainly not one that I regret,
Now, you're a linebacker coming out. I'm assuming you're a big Boz fan?
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, when I went down there, he was not around, but a guy that I had played with, Mark Van Kieserblick, was a couple years ahead of me at Rockhurst, and he went down there and had a really good career, Paul Migliazzo. So those guys were down there, and I went down and hung out with them for the recruiting trip, but I never personally met Bosworth. And
was that one of the reasons why you were thinking about Oklahoma, or?
Yeah, I'm sure. I don't know if I want to be exactly like Boz even back then, but it was considered linebacker U. And they were doing so well, so that was naturally a place to go. They had fun, so that was interesting.
And then, do you remember Dante Jones?
The linebacker.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think he may have come a little bit after Brian Bosworth. This is just a side note. I used to play with him at the Bears, but he came from Oklahoma. So it was kind of cool because I wanted to be a linebacker as well, and I kind of admired the boss. But what other schools were you looking at besides Oklahoma?
I didn't know you admired the boss.
I did.
Huh.
See?
Back up on that. I went to Penn State, went for a visit to Penn State. Obviously, Joe Paterno. Went out for a visit there, and that was it. And I was playing basketball, so it was difficult to travel, to go do recruiting trips and such.
Right.
It wasn't a big decision. So I got kind of tired of the whole charade, and I'm not going to go. In fact, Missouri was recruiting me very heavily, and I was just like, guys, I don't think it. I don't know how to politely say, hey, I've already made up my decision. I don't want to go down there and waste your time. So
you weren't trying to switch hats or take off T-shirts with different schools or anything like that? That wasn't you?
I was the one that started that. Me and Emmett. Emmett was our year, wasn't he?
I thought
maybe a year ahead of us.
Yeah, I think he was a year ahead of us.
Who was drafted number 1 in our class out of in 91?
I have no idea.
Okay. You were closer to it than I was.
Well, hold on. Okay. All right. So did Holtz ever come down to talk to mom and dad?
He did. He came for a visit. He came to the school, and of course it's crazy and all that. And Chris Russell was a nose guard that ended up going to Missouri and playing and such. And he kind of talked to both of us and said, it'd be nice to have you guys both go there or what have you. But Holtz was all, he was fantastic in front of the parents. He just didn't have a tough sell. He kind of, so he had it in the bag. And Holtz has been extremely, really, very good to our family. And so it just absolutely no complaints whatsoever. And I was a pain in his ass, but, what have you.
No, really? Were you really? I didn't know that. Okay, so you say yes to Notre Dame. You get down there, and coming from Rockhurst, was it kind of a culture shock for you, or was it kind of like, hey, this is how it was at Rockhurst, except there were girls?
No, are you kidding? I'm close. Our freshman year, we come in, we're in the dorms. My dad and I drove up. We dropped off our stuff, and weren't we in Flannery or whatever? We were in there.
Yeah, one of those dorms.
I think Colo and I were roommates. And I remember, in that first week, being like, I'm going to go home and be a gas station attendant. I'm not going to be able to make it. It was defeating, and I called home and, they're like, Christ, you're a buzzkill. They got this image of how wonderful it is. We don't want to hear you complaining, Call back when you're in a better mood.
Really?
I mean, yeah. Dad was not – he didn't suffer complaining too much, so in a good way.
So was it like, so he dropped you off, the send you on your way, or did he kind of hang out for a couple of days after you moved in, or?
No, he headed back, and I think that's maybe an option nowadays, but
right.
That wasn't even I don't even think something that you'd consider. I don't remember anybody kind of having that type of scenario. So, no, he probably, had 3 days to get back home, and, I guess he went home.
All right, so we're there, and, I was intimidated as crap. There were 30 linebackers. There was a dude named Donnie Grimm, whose brother was in the league.
Russ, yeah.
You were there.
Well, then there was Foge was the linebacker coach, and there was that pick connection, Yeah.
I was literally, I was like, Mom, I'm coming home. This is crazy. And then it was not only will I never play here, I had some academic issues my first semester. So
academics, never an issue.
However, I do remember our kind of first contact, and I wanted to bring this up because,
yeah,
I don't know if it was divine intervention or what, but I don't know if you remember the story. I don't know if you know what I'm talking about, but it was like a crazy storm outside or something like that. And we were leaving our practice facility, and, guys are covered up and running over to dorms or whatever. And somehow we kind of left around the same time. And there was this big ass, a log or part of a tree fell on the street or on the road. And it was weird. I kind of looked at you kind of looked at me, and I guess we nodded and we picked it up.
It was like, somebody's got to move that thing, and caught eyes, and you were kind of thinking the same thing. And I think we just kind of nodded, moved it out of the way, and then just kept, just kind of walked, kept going. And
now that sounds just so simple, right? But I think that was kind of this, and I don't want to get too deep, but I don't know what it was. It was something where, I found my soulmate, my male soulmate, or some crazy stuff like that. I don't know, but
no, that's not the first thing you need to describe. It's a good thing I love you.
Do you really? Okay, so then fast forward a little bit. So tell me what the transition was like for you, being this All-American linebacker coming in, and then now Holtz had a conversation about putting your hand down on the offensive line. How did that work out?
Yeah, there wasn't much of a conversation. So now, fortunately, on my mom's side, they're very accomplished in athletics as well. So Danny Ferry is my cousin, Bob Ferry, and so no matter what I had accomplished or whatever, there was still some levity in the house of, hey, oh, you're the best player in Missouri this year? Well, we've got family on their side. So, but I think that kind of helped me. So it was just kind of more of the reality. So when I got to Notre Dame, and it was obvious I was a step slow, and it was a gift that I lettered and was on the kickoff return or something, and such. But we're going to the bowl game our freshman year in Dallas, and I'm sitting next to Jim Strong, the running back coach. And so, we might have been out the night before and headed to practice, and he's sitting there and he's like, man, I was watching you doing the linebacker drills. You'd be a really good offensive lineman. It's not what I wanted to hear. And that was it. That was like now I knew the writing was on the wall. And when they said, hey, you're gonna move, it wasn't that traumatic. I mean, I was looking at the linebackers, and I wasn't gonna stick there. You'd already moved to D line. They got us fat guys out of.
You just beat yourself. That's impressive.
I'm trying. I'll light it up if you want me to.
Please do not.
Right.
Thank you.
Well, let's see how this goes. So yeah, that was not. But look at. So think about like how Miami recruited. They just recruited athletes and put them in the right spot. And we were so fast. There was no room for a slow linebacker. And so I went from being slow to fast.
Right.
Now I was, 20 pounds underweight or whatever, but we were all pretty light back then. In the offense that we ran, we pulled and cut, Joe don't cut, Joe don't chop type of thing. But, it was the best thing that could ever happen.
Well, think about, you talk about Holtz and the guys we had. He moved Todd Light from receiver to corner. Right?
I would have liked to have been in that conversation. I would like to.
Well, I think he still has.
T. Light didn't just say, yeah.
Right. Well, but I think that didn't Todd have not that we had contracts, but wasn't Todd allowed to spat his shoes? Like he was the only one?
Yeah, I've heard.
It's like a rumor.
I definitely have heard the story, and that was the deal. But with Todd, he backed it up. Todd is a very, very motivated guy. And so even when we're screwing around or whatever, Todd's like, "What's your plan, man?" We're gonna blow it out tonight and have a great time, but you got to stay focused. What's the next thing here? So, that I would have liked to have, or just. I wonder how that went down when Holtz was like, and I wonder how soon Holtz knew the top was going to a defensive back.
Right.
So.
Well, but he changed. He changed a lot of people, and literally, I guess he was kind of taking. And not saying that he wanted to emulate Miami, but he was taking that philosophy of getting athletes in, and saying, and I'm sure it was on his board somewhere where it was like Tim Ryan, Rockhurst, guard, so.
Well, the Coach Ferentz, Iowa, at the time was a GA recruiting for Colorado.
Wow, okay.
Came and visited me and Dad, and we're in the family living room and whatever. And I probably wasn't going to go to Colorado, but he's like, "Man, if I think you'd be an awesome center." And so we didn't kick him out of the house, but we're like, "Come on, man! Who wants to hear that?" But that's probably why he says, he was an honest, that's the kind of guy you want to play for. So, I'd heard it back then. And again, it wasn't like a hard transition, but to your point, I think that they just wanted the best athletes on the board and put them in there and do what have you. You got Andy going to tackle. Look at his
tight end, right.
Yeah. I'm sorry, going from tight end to tackle. Just part of the deal. So you could be a 235-pound linebacker coming out of high school and think that you're going to get – well, you're not going to – they look at the guys that are coming out of like, 210.
Right, exactly.
What did Ray Lewis come out at? Do you know? Have any idea?
No idea. No idea.
Yeah, anyway.
So I want you to think about kind of a good Holtz story. But in the meantime, as you're thinking about that, I want to kind of share kind of a funny story. I know you're kind of nervous because there's 1,000.
No, I'm not. Every story that we got, you can't tell. If it's entertaining, you can't tell it. So fire away. What do we do? Do we blow all the candles out at mass?
All right. So can you just touch upon lightly your relationship with Joe Moore and how that went from maybe kind of like he's a son of a bitch to kind of where you're at now?
And Joe was outside of my dad, he changed my life, but not like when you're living it. He was He was an old school. For anybody that didn't know Joe Moore, he's now a legacy in the college ranks as an offensive lineman. There's a Joe Moore camp that there's a litany of people that are in the Hall of Fame. Donnie Grimm, you mentioned Russ Grimm. Joe started at Pitt as a running back coach. He'd come from high school, and then he went to coach the linemen. And he basically told those guys, and I think Russ was his first class.
Oh, wow.
And he was like, look, I might not know everything about being an offensive lineman, but I will. And you're going to be the best of the best. And then they had a great relationship with the Steelers, and it was the 80s. I mean, that stuff was cool. Awesome. So when Joe rolled into Notre Dame, he had a little bit different philosophy than Joe, but than Lou, but it was all about discipline. And so as loose and as articulate as Joe could get on his feedback, is all he wanted fundamentals. And that's all we would do is hands, feet, and he's like, I don't care about 7-on-7 or whatever. You guys are you're gonna kill each other before we move to the next stage because you don't have your fundamentals. And so Joe was new at Notre Dame and kind of finding his way. And just very quickly, he came in our sophomore year, right, which was the national championship, and he had the tight ends and maybe tackles or something like that. So I think by my junior year, Joe had all the offensive line. And here's a guy that's got, Russ, Jimbo, Freilich, these are Hall of Famer, clearly he knows what he's talking about. So you can't tell the guy to go whatever as much as you want to. So my relationship with Joe was just do whatever I was told. Now, I kind of stepped out of line a couple times, and he took care of me. Conversely, a guy like Grooney, who had a 10-year career and what have you, he wasn't afraid to kind of bang it with Joe. I mean, he would, he was the one that would kind of say, well, this or that, and the rest of us are in the, meetings going, Greenhart, you just built this, man. We're going to be out there forever. But I think that's why Grooney was so good. I mean, he was just an outspoken, that was kind of like his thing. And slowly, the point of my story is slowly over time, we all molded together and we kind of thought the same way. And so fast forward to Joe's legacy, which is he's got this Joe Moore camp, and the network of people specifically, that had some kind of connection with Joe, and it's pretty simple. It's a mental toughness and fundamentals, and he's going to break you down. He's gonna crush you, and he hopes you quit. He's like, I know more than you, and I'll break you. Let's see if you can kind of come back. And so, I don't care if you're Andy or Grooney, who had this unbelievable pro careers, to myself that had a decent career that went into the professional world, or guys like Wodecki and such that, didn't get to actually play or, have any kind of success on the football field. That type of, especially with, like, in my class, like the Joe Allens and the Jim Kinchers, those guys are running business right now.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
And it's all on that mental toughness, and every single thing that he talked to all of us about, although at that time it might have been about, like, winning the game on Saturday or what have you, was much more prevalent on what happens to us on a day-to-day basis. And Lou was a lot like that too. But Joe, he was just a unique, had a great communication style, but there was no BS. And anybody that knows him or played for him or whatever, they're going to have some kind of a similar story and such. But the proof's in the pudding. I mean, he just, the people that followed in his footsteps and stuff, and, kind of specifically to the Joe Moore camp. So this camp had been going on, since he passed away. Russ Grimm had been running it, and I just fortunately went to it, only got to go to it once. And then the last time I was there, all the new Notre Dame guys came in. These studs. It was the most humiliating. I was looking at these guys, and they move like cats, and they're just good. It was like, thank God they're on our side, or if I'm part of that. That's an offensive lineman type of thing. So, to see his reputation and his legacy expand like that, and the respect shown back from the guys that are out there now, and then you watch those guys block now. I mean, they are phenomenal. They're great with their hands. They're great athletes, and they're tough. So I hope Joe's proud, because he's got some, there's some folks out there following in his footsteps, doing it the right way.
Now, along with that, they created a trophy.
Right.
That goes around. Can you kind of explain that a little bit? Kind of, it goes around to each year when it trades off. Can you kind of go into that?
Yeah, exactly. Good question to show what Aaron Taylor has done. Aaron was a couple of years behind us, had a good career at Notre Dame, went on to get a Super Bowl ring, is now on CBS. Russ Grimm and that kind of, let's just say the Pitt guys, they had kind of taken the Joe Moore legacy with the camp and all that. And Aaron's like, hey, you know what? There's something out there. And Aaron's the type of guy that can promote it and be a really good front man. And it was awesome. So, it's legit. So you got the kind of the fundamentals of a camp, hitting those kids in high school. And then you got Aaron working the national route, which is, hey, this is not an individual award. This is a team award. And Aaron really focused on that, saying, hey, we don't want this to be this is going to be an impressive statue. This is going to be something kind of like the Stanley Cup. So if you win the Joe Moore Award, you're recognized as the best offensive line in the country at that time. One of the nice things about that is a legacy member, meaning that I played for Joe, or anybody that was connected with Joe somehow, we all get to watch the film and we have some input on what these guys are doing. And so when it all started up, Alabama was smoking Notre Dame, Iowa. I mean, you had there was just some big, it was really entertaining to kind of watch all that stuff. Aaron was able to go out and get the backing, to raise the money. I think Turtle was a big part of that. And, trying to reach out to the right people and say, hey, how do we do this in the right way where this thing can build, can potentially be as important as the Theismann to the offensive line type of, if you want to compare it or recognize folks. And the fact that he did it as a team, or the 5 linemen, I think I gravitated with a lot of folks that understand what the offensive line is about. And so if you're not familiar with this trophy, you're not carrying this thing around. You got to go get it delivered.
That's huge, right?
Yeah, it's like, it's probably 6 feet wide by maybe 4.5, 5 feet tall,
wow.
I think. And Aaron does a really nice job. Jordy Halter, the Notre Dame guys with it, got this thing off the ground where they go to the school and they present it to them, and then it's kind of like a surprise. And so they unveil it to, whatever that team is, and that team, keeps the trophy for, until the next team, the next year passes and they vote on another group. So it's gaining speed, and I don't want to plug anything, but if you guys want to donate to seeing good offensive linemen, go look up Joe Moore and Russ Grimm. Look up Joe Moore, the Joe Moore camp, and then the Joe Moore Award, either Aaron Taylor or Russ Grimm. That's it.
I'm sure all the offensive linemen out there are just going to be excited about that. So I'm being sarcastic. That's funny.
I didn't hear you.
I'm being sarcastic. I was just saying that we got a lot of offensive linemen watching that are going to be excited about that.
Yep, Friday night, big offensive line time for Facebook.
All right, so we're going to fast forward a little bit, but I asked you to kind of think about a Holtz story. Is there one that you feel comfortable kind of talking about?
Well, I'm gonna get 3 if I can.
Yes, this is your show. This is the Tim Ryan show.
No, I got to remember them. So remind me if I get lost in it. First and foremost, my parents were very supportive of me and got to travel to our games. There were a lot of parents that had to do that. I know, so after the games, the tailgating, because we won, the tailgating was a lot of fun. And, you're meeting people from all over the country. And, there's just a kind of a different kind of little clique gets moving. And then, we were lucky enough to start that when we were sophomores. So if you'll remember our senior year, for some reason we had 4 games at 11 o'clock in the morning or noon. So we had the whole day to tailgate and all that kind of stuff. But my parents would go to the away games and what have you. So my favorite story is, I don't know where we're at, but Holtz gets off the bus and he's walking into the hotel and he's like, "Oh, they're the Ryans. I guess we're at the right hotel." So my dad loved that. And, so that's one. When I was getting recruited, I didn't know anything about what Lou Holtz or whatever. I visited on a weekday, and Holtz drove me from then the ACC to what would be Lofton or to his house.
Okay.
And he blew every stoplight. He drove 100 miles an hour, and he had no patience for any and I was like, I can handle that. Pretty cool. So I definitely like that. I think the third story is my sophomore year. We're pretty early in the season, and Holtz wants to have a meeting, and he's like, "I want you and your dad to come in." And obviously, I think I had to do more with my grades than what was going on in the field. So I'm like, this, shit. So this is not good. And my dad comes in with a little bit different attitude. So we go over there Saturday morning, and I had kind of rolled out of bed, put a hat on, and my dad, instead of feeling like I'm in trouble, my dad's like, "This could be kind of cool. We're gonna, I'm like, "I don't think so, man." He's not pulling us in here to tell us, congratulations on something that, the third game in the season. So we get in there, and he kind of lays into me about my grades and, the path forward or whatever. But before we kind of get there, and before Lou lays the tone of the meeting, my dad's like, "Lou, I just want to go back to Kansas City and tell everybody I called you Lou." And, Lou did not accept that. And so he just kind of it's not like he spit. So then he looks at me, and he's like, kind of looking me up and down, and, I hadn't showered and whatever. And he's like, "If you're going to present yourself to the boss and look like that, you're just not going to go really far." So in his way, he drilled in on whatever it is. Now walking out, but then he built us back up, and he's not going to piss my dad off, and
right.
Had dad feeling like whatever. So as we're walking out of there, and that ACC, so when you come out of that one deal and you kind of walk into the parking lot, and the stadium's right there when you're looking out, and I'm like, I don't know what just happened there. And my dad's quiet, which is not usual, and then he kind of is like, "Not the best way to introduce myself, huh?" And that was always moving forward. And, got in the car, and he's like, "Do I got to talk about the grades or not?" And I'm like, "No, let's go." And so that always, I definitely can't forget that with Lou. And again, never had a lot of, he was very supportive and really, really good to my parents. And unfortunately, with guys like my dad, Coach Sev, and Joe Moore, who were more hands-on, impactful in my life, the things that Lou, was really good at with preparing us for life and those things, and we're doing that meditation thing or whatever.
Right.
You don't remember that until you're 30 or 40 or
exactly. Exactly.
You're like, "Oh, that's what that guy was talking about." Oh, yeah. All right, that makes sense. So, we just, the amount of talent and the age and the time that we hit Notre Dame, and for me, looking back at what we did and what have you, compared to the social media and all this visibility and such. It was just a totally different thing. And, you know, I might as well have the checkered pants on, but that's
we've talked about that, right? I mean, now we're the guys that, well, and it was interesting. I think you pointed out maybe a couple of years ago, you know, you were talking about your dad, God bless his soul. You're like, we're his age, which was astonishing to us, right? I mean, we're in the grounds going, what?
They said Lou Holtz is 53 when he was coaching that game. And I'm like, come on, man, you know.
Exactly.
Yeah.
All right, so we're going to fast forward a little bit. And I just want to tell one story, kind of, I want to say it sums up our relationship, but we started to eventually we were roommates, but before then, we actually roomed together on the road. Or I'm sorry, for games. And this is the most bizarre thing. We would spend hours and hours at night. This is night before a game, talking. And I'm not sure how many hours we eventually slept, maybe like 3 or 4. But I thought that was kind of the coolest thing. And then I think that's kind of where we may have bonded. It's my opinion. But one of the things I do remember is it was a home game. And when we're playing at home games in Notre Dame, we were staying at, I think it was a Holiday Inn in Mishawaka or somewhere. And so we would stay there the night before home game. And somebody had this crazy idea as a dessert to serve us cupcakes.
Yeah.
And now this place, it was nice. The holiday was nice. Had a nice pool and all. And it was kind of good.
That was the back then, man. That was good stuff.
Yeah, it was big time. And then, you know, all the rooms were around and everything. And, you know, we kind of had our team dinner and everything. It was okay. Like, hey guys, we'll take cupcakes. And they brought out like three. They brought out like 5 trays of cupcakes. And now they had absolutely no, and I'm sure we didn't at the time either. But from the time they gave us the cupcakes to maybe 20 feet, which was the door that everybody left to go to their rooms, it was fine. Out as soon as we went outside, I mean, you walked outside, it was like a war zone. There were cupcakes flying everywhere, back and forth. And I remember getting hit with it, but I remember trying to like run and dodge to get to our room. And then I remember as soon as we got to the room, it was like pop, 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 like 3 hit our door. It was so late. Then I looked in the pool, and I mean, whose idea was that?
They're not there anymore. They were the day after. And God bless the person, you know, I mean, because they were homemade, you know.
Right, exactly.
It wasn't like they got them down at the bakery or something. Some poor person poured their heart and soul into like feeding I got to feed the Notre Dame team, and we're, you know, it looked like a shooting range.
All right, dude. I mean, this can go on forever, and I'm kind of upset because I got so much more to talk to you. But I want to give me your most memorable football story at Notre Dame. I mean, what is it that you kind of cherish most about being part of your 4 years at Notre Dame?
I mean,
outside of me.
Oh, well, that's a wrap. So, I mean, the national championship, but it happened to us so young. I tell you, like right now, I mean, let's talk about the '88 national championship team. So we had unbelievable talent coming in our class, right behind us, and then you had a group like Stams and Pritchett and those guys that had kind of journeyman, that they'd weathered the storm. And to me, you know, the leadership that those guys had from the I don't know what the word is, but you know, they've been on the downside. They knew not to take things for granted. They're like, hey, you know, you gotta focus on this, and you know, make sure this is an opportunity we don't want to slip away. And we're like, we're sophomores, man. We just ran all of you off the, we're like,
Right.
But then as, we kept doing well, and Corny Southall and Mark Green, those guys, the way they managed or stepped up and kind of showed what the leadership is. Unfortunately, I don't think we had that our senior year. And so, we had more talent than anybody.
I think you're right.
Arguable, but, we let some games slip away, and that was on our watch. And I kind of think it was because it was too easy. And I still think back about those guys and the leadership that they're like, hey, we're going to have fun. We're going to go out and do a good job. But they grounded the situation, and they talked about the backbone of character, and, this isn't kind of a free ride. And I didn't think about that for 10 years. And then you kind of look back about it. And when it comes to leadership, that was a perfect mixture of how to get things done, how not to be, it just kind of like as you go through life, you're like, how do you be successful?
Right.
What are the characteristics? What tactically do you do as opposed to strategically? And then how do you handle all those different things? And I just think back about that group that was just, on the cusp of winning a national championship when 2 years ago, Notre Dame was in the doghouse and all that, and the way that they handled it. And so, again, I was a sophomore, but there was the way that they made you kind of keep your stuff together and not get over your skis. And so it wasn't always about how much talent you had. When things go south, talent doesn't mean anything because you got to fall back on something and do it the right way. So that's one of my favorite things about Notre Dame. The fact that Notre Dame recruited nationally, so you had a really eclectic. Stonebreaker was probably one of the best things for our team because just what he could do we weren't stale. You had a lot of attitudes and all that kind of stuff, and so he could bounce around and kind of keep all that stuff together. So the team that we had with the amount of talent kind of going through there is kind of its own synergy and such. And then as it kind of relates to we were right in the middle of the Mecca. Like Notre Dame was back on top, and again, it was a different era and all that kind of stuff. But it was pretty fun to be able to say that you came out of that place and you played for Notre Dame. Now, conversely, I got to go down to Tampa and play for the Bucks, and was good friends with Mike Sullivan, who played for Miami, played with a bunch of those Miami guys who got a bad rap, or the Catholics versus convicts. They were exactly like us. We were all there were more Catholics probably on that Miami team.
Right.
And so that was a great revelation into like, okay, it's all about perspective, image, or whatever, because we're all the same. Jimmy ran a program that, be as loose as you want, but you know what? If you don't do the right things,
exactly,
you're not going to win,
Right.
Lou ran a program that was like, you're going to do it my way, and it worked. So a little bit different coaching styles, but still, there was a lot of talent in those 3 or 4, 5-year span that, every game was big, and it's just a little bit different today. And I'm sure it's just because I'm old, which I don't deal with.
So talking about Tampa for a little bit, I do have to thank you for introducing me to several things. One of them is motorcycles. And
came around.
I'm sorry?
You came around?
Yes. But I was kind of alluding to other things, but we can't talk about those things that you've taught me. Or I'm sorry, things that you've introduced me to. Sorry.
It's your Facebook show, bud. I'll go anywhere you want. It'll be the last one.
So one of the most impressive stories about you, and there's many, but I think is hilarious, is can you kind of share with us like how you got started writing and the fact that it had to do with the parking lot, the Tampa Bay parking lot.
Okay, so we were, when did we graduate? 91?
So it was your first year.
Yeah. And I was drafted by Tampa. I went down to Tampa. Vince Namoli had set me up and was, I mean, just that's the Notre Dame connection. Not so much that, you know, he was successful and had a place to put me up, but it was like, look, you're part of the family now. You got to, you know, this is how things are supposed to go.
Right.
But I went and watched The Terminator and came out of there, and I was like, you know, I think I can just go buy one of those things. I mean, you know, nothing stopped me. So I went over there and bought it. And I didn't know how to ride it, had no idea. And so Bruce Reimers was a guard on our team, played in Cincinnati under Sam Weish,
okay.
And was in the famous 49ers games and all that kind of stuff. You know, that was part of that offensive line group anyway, he rode bikes, and I was like, hey, do you mind going and pick this up with me? I need a way to get it back. And so when he picked it up, I just kind of watched what he did to get out of there. And it's just shifting gears. But when I got home, I didn't really know how to ride it. So I would just go in the parking lots and ride around as slow as I could, or, you know, just get your bearings and all that kind of stuff. And you just, over time, you build the confidence to get on the road and all that kind of stuff.
You're skipping like the whole point.
What was the point?
Which was you dropped it like 1,000 times because you actually taught yourself how to ride a motorcycle.
Well, yeah. I mean,
but you didn't say that. I mean, that was the whole thing, was that you got this idea of, hey, I want to get a motorcycle because of the Terminator, and then a couple hours later,
on the first day I had it, at the third turn in the parking lot, back end slipped out, and I lost it. A month after I bought the thing, you could see the scrapes. You could see where it went down on the engine guard or whatever it was, and it wasn't going that fast. So a lot of times when you're losing your balance or whatever, I mean, it's harder to go slow, but there were several mishaps that is just part of the learning curve. And so once you get back out there, but, you know, Tampa, you could ride all the time. Right. Everybody, you know, there was a big motorcycle community, and, you know, there is you could find a lot of fun to go ride year round and all that. Now, also, you had 6 months a year to do kind of whatever you wanted, and so the ability to ride all the time and such, I really enjoyed it. I loved it. Got into some, you know, you take your bumps or what have you, but I'm fast forwarding to. Once I left Tampa, I had the bike and brought it with me. Is this where you want me to go?
Yes, to Chicago. You brought it to Chicago.
Well, I'd moved to 3 or 4 different places, and so I bought my bike in the late 80s, and I'd been to 3 different places. By the time I got in Chicago, because of the traffic and all of that, I was like, this is just kind of an anchor. I don't get to ride it like, used to. So I sold it.
Well, back. Okay, you're checking the story up. So
why don't you tell it?
Thank you.
I'll just go like this.
Thank you. You have this awesome bike, and didn't it have like some tiger paws or like a Beowulf or a snowman or something? What was it, a snowman or a wolf or a kitten or something? What was it?
It was a polar
bear. So I'm impressed.
Polar bear. The cool thing about that was I wanted to get a custom paint job, and I find a guy that'll do the paint, and he's like, "What do you want?" And I'm like, I'm kind of thinking of a landscape thing, and da da da. And he's like, "All right, blah blah blah," and he shows me these different pictures of his art books, which I looked like comics or whatever. And so he had this polar bear coming out of the snow or whatever, and I had my tank and the background and all that, and I thought it was awesome. So we're out riding, and we're hanging out at the bar or something, and playing pool. And this guy's like, "Hey, is that your bike out there?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And he pulls up his shirt. He's got a tattoo of the same thing.
That's crazy.
Yeah, and I'm like, it's probably not the original then. I wasn't the first one that thought of that. But yeah, that's your favorite story. We got that in.
It's hilarious. Okay, so then, and I'm impressed. I mean, I see it. We're starting to hang out in Chicago. You're back in Chicago. Everything's going nice, and I want one. I wanted one for a while.
I didn't know that.
Pardon me?
I didn't know that at the time.
Right. No, right. This is my secret envy of you. So, I wanted to be like you. I wanted to ride like you, and
you never saw me ride. How do you know? You never saw me ride.
I finally got it. Finally got the bike, and I go to surprise you with the bike. Hey, man, we can ride together. We can do this together. And you had literally just sold it like 2 or 3 weeks ago. Or I'm sorry, 2 or 3 weeks before.
I had now, as unfortunate as that might have sounded at the time, it actually spawned into a bigger and better deal because I got back into it. And to your credit, you don't do things lightly. So if you're in, you're all in. And the next year, we were at Sturgis. You were going to build a bike and whatever, but you also had this bike. So the whole time we're talking about going to Sturgis, I'm thinking I'm going to be on your bike because you're going to build. I'm going to be on the Fat Boy, and you're going to be on this bike that you're going to build. And, halfway through this, like, okay, the chopper's not going to be done on time. And you're like, hey, I got taken care of. You went to one of your Harley buddies and you got us a cop bike. Remember? So the whole way out there, I'm riding. I'm like, God, I was going to be on this really awesome Fat Boy, and now I'm going to be on this kind of cop bike. And it kind of looked like a cop boy. I think it was a street glide.
Right.
And I get on that thing, and it's precision. It was awesome. I mean, it handled awesome, especially down there. And you're on your new Fat Boy that you had lowered so you can't turn and all the, like through Needles Highway. And I'm like, on a cop bike flying through there. And I was like, man, that actually worked out pretty well.
So you kind of alluded to our first trip to Sturgis together. Before I get to that, we have a question from Scott S. And he's really impressed with your Chicago flag in the background and wanted to know if you're in the Chicago area.
I am in Chicago. Okay. I live in Chicago, downtown Chicago.
Oh.
I'm going to have to plug that then. All those paintings back there are done by John Bucati.
Nice.
John Bucati lives down in New Orleans. He actually knows Stoney. He's got a shop down there. John was a couple years behind me at Rockhurst.
Oh, cool.
And I went to school with his brother. John lived up here in Chicago for a while, and John didn't come across as an artist at all. To me, we had more, we played flag football and ended up in the bars, and I had no idea this guy could paint. And Doug Dunley runs some stuff. That's not a plug, but he started putting some of those paintings up, and I saw it, and I really liked them, and so worked with him to come up with those. But his gig is he kind of goes to some live event and does a painting of it, and that's where those came from.
Oh, nice. Okay, so we can only. So is that an Irish one above the Chicago one?
Yep.
Okay, gotcha. Yep, perfect now. Okay.
Yep.
All right. So, okay, just FYI, we're gonna have to wind this down, but because we're almost at an hour now, but you definitely have to come back because, we still have 20 years to cover, but I do want to add.
Yeah, the second 20 half is not going to be Facebook heavy. Yeah.
Well, especially after this story. So, since we're kind of talking about our first Sturgis trip together, right? So we are just the yuppies of bikers, right? We got all this new Harley leather gear and everything, and we're just thinking
we are decked out.
Exactly. And so we come up with this plan. We're going to rent this RV. We're going to trailer our bikes down. This is going to be great. So we get to the point, and so this is night of, or night day of. We're going to leave, and we have the RV, and that's packed, and we have the trailer. But it literally is taking us hours. We have 2 bikes to strap down. It's taking us hours. We can't figure this out for the life of us.
We can't figure out tie-down straps.
And then what happens?
Well, so like you're saying, we were going to leave for Sturgis at 8 in the morning. And we said that the day before that, we're going to go do all of our running around and what have you. That took a little bit longer. So we were supposed to be back at your place, let's say at like 8 o'clock at night. And we got back at like 10 o'clock. So things are like running behind. And we were going to get some good sleep, get up on the, and hit the road. And we had a couple beers and we're screwing around. We couldn't figure out how to get them loaded. Remember, we loaded them one way and then I was like, that's not going to work. And so by the time we kind of figure everything out, it's 1 or 2 in the morning. We're not completely sober, and out of nowhere, and you guys got to know Chris's neighborhood. It's got an alley in the back, but it's not accessible. It's not. You got to know where you're going to kind of get there. You're not going to stumble across this thing. And this dude rolls down the. We've got the RV and the trailer, so there's not a whole lot of room, and he kind of fits through, and he's on some kind of a Springer or something like that. He's got a
well, who is you said who
is it?
Yeah, you have to explain who it is.
I have no idea who it is.
Oh, right, like you just
blonde hair. I mean, he looked like a biker. He looked like something straight out of any real biker magazine that you
like Easy Rider.
Yeah, and he's 60 years old. I mean, he was not, he was an older guy. And he kind of rolls through, and I don't even really remember what he had told us, but he said, just have fun and be safe out there, right? And he kind of rolls through, and we didn't think I was like, oh, that, kind of weird. And I think, like, when we were driving up there, it's like, that guy really came through last night.
That just happened, really?
That happened, right? And I mean, if I didn't, I wouldn't believe us. I mean, if you know where your place is at, Rick and those guys that know the place, they're like, Jack Daniels is talking or something. And it happened. And, we kind of coined him as our guardian angel and, goes back to the whole thing.
It was like this mythical kind of being kind of comes through, like literally. And then I think after that, I mean, he may have even showed us kind of how to tie the bikes down because
probably, yeah.
And he kind of came over and didn't really talk a lot. And we're telling him, hey, this is what we're trying to do. And literally, it's like he kind of gave us some advice. And literally with it, now mind you, this has taken us probably 4 hours. After he kind of showed us, it took us like 15 minutes.
Yeah, and we were ready to go, and I don't even remember him leaving. It was just kind of like, yeah, I don't know.
And so we take the RV, we got the bikes in the back, and it's our first time at Sturgis, and we're kind of going across country. And it was a blast. And we get there and have this kind of crazy motorcycle experience. We're seeing Alice Cooper. We're at the Buffalo Chip at Sturgis. I mean, there's 500,000 people in Sturgis. And it was a great experience, and especially kind of having that experience with you, being a fellow rider, kind of our history. And, I mean, it was just an awesome, awesome time.
It was, and it was raw. Like, we didn't know, we're just no expectations. Let's just go kind of figure it out. which helped for the future rides and, like the house and the cooking and all that kind of stuff. But if we wouldn't have had to kind of, and I don't want to say we roughed it, but, we just, we took some hits and it's like, all right, we're not going to do that again, or let's make sure to do that again. And, just to kind of, I don't want to say separate from, like, if you're going to stay right down in that group, you're going to be caught up in the craziness of it all and that kind of stuff. And, you can't do that for a week, especially when you got the Black Hills to ride through and all that. So, it's kind of instrumental to figuring out like what the future trips and your future agendas and all the work that you put into all that and such. But yeah, I mean, especially the part where, we go out and have a good time riding all day and then we come back into, like, I guess, town, and you'd sit there for 45 minutes trying to, hold your bike up to get back to the Buffalo Chip.
And I think
do you remember when that Hell's Angel dude rolled down? So we're all in line, because we're all waiting to take go down. And that Hell's Angel guy just rides, he's got a Hell's Angels patch, rides right down the opposite side of the road, cuts off everybody and goes where he wants. And you go tell that guy to.
But I think kind of that initial experience, the way we did it, kind of worked out in a way where that was kind of, from that experience, we were able to model our other trips off of, because what Tim is talking about, so, Tim planned these amazing rides all over South Dakota, the Mount Rushmore, Crazy Horse, Black Hills, Needles Highway, all this other stuff. And then the Buffalo Chip is down here, Sturgis is right here, and then all the rides are out here. So in order for us to get back down here, we had to go through Sturgis, and that's what Tim was alluding to, is that it was so packed that it would take us literally an hour trying to get from our ride back to where our camp was. And so we kind of did this thing where we would ride all day, and then when we get home, we would cook, eat, or whatever, and then just chill for the rest of the night. And I think, although that kind of sounds kind of simple, I mean, you have all this riding to do, and I think that's what kind of formed what we do. And since we've gone back several other times, that's what we do. Now we kind of rough it and rent a house and kind of make it all nice.
Yeah, we rough it.
With cooking and everything. But the one kind of story I want to tell about that, and there's 1,000 stories, unfortunately, but when we got our RV, we were able to get and I forgot what kind, it was, do you remember the name of the RV we had? Like
Travel America, or
yeah. And so we actually rented a certain model. They didn't have one. They didn't have the one we were supposed to get, but there was a German family that had just returned one, and they kind of switched it all up and cleaned it out and everything, and they gave us that one. So okay, great, this is fine. We get down there. We're at the Buffalo Chip, and it is crazy hot. And we're like, okay, it's hot in here. We're not small guys, so we were cranking the air conditioner, and literally we had it going on for at least all day, or at least 6-7 hours, more than that. And I remember I bought the little DVD player. We're watching Godfather on this itty bitty screen. All right, so then after a couple hours, it stops, and we're like, oh no, this is crazy, this is crazy. So we're rummaging through stuff. We finally find the manual. We pick it up, and the manual is in German. And we're like, are you kidding me?
Well, you studied German, right?
Exactly, right. So, and of course, because we're both mechanics, so we know air conditioning and condensers and all this other stuff, right? So we freak out. We finally call the number. They're like, hey, we're not going to be able to get anybody to you until like a week from now. And we're like, okay, great. And I don't know who told us, but somebody was like, well, did you try turning it off and then turning it on again? And we're like, huh? And literally we turned it off, and then it was fine after. I mean, so we turned it off for a couple hours, turned back on, and it was great.
Well, and I think that also was kind of the part was like, all right, man, we're going to do this again. We're not going to do it this way. It's like, all right, this is fun. All the Jack Daniels and movies and stuff. Because at night, we could have gone to, you're in a campground.
Right.
So it's like, all right, well, if we're not in a campground and we want to go riding and, just kind of piece it together. But I'd never give up that first ride, and the things that, just you saw in the campground.
All right. One last story. So we're out, and Tim is a stickler, right, for kind of weather and navigation, everything, right? So this guy's putting maps together, and that's great because I have no sense of direction, and Tim's doing all this stuff, and he watches the weather and all this other stuff. So we're out, and we're literally t-shirt and jeans, and we go on this great ride, and on the way back, it's like a freaking monsoon. I mean, like literally, it's raining sideways. It's insane. And somehow we made it to at least a gas station where there was like 1,000 other people, right? And we saw like this. We had this small window, but then we got caught again.
But those one guys took off, and they were t-shirt, shorts, and I mean, it was a driving rain. Anybody that's been, so the terrible riding conditions, and they were on choppers, and they fought through it. And I was like, can't we do that? I mean, we got a little bit more, and it didn't work out.
So we start, no rain, and all of a sudden it starts raining crazy, and I cannot see in front of me. And you were leading, and I lost him, but it's raining so hard, I had to pull over because I couldn't go anymore. Like, oh my God, I hope Tim's okay. So I'm literally bent over behind the bike because it's raining sideways. And eventually that died down. I get back on the bike, and you're literally like 20 yards ahead of me. It was hilarious. I was
20
like,
yards, but I'd gotten off the bike.
Right.
And went and like took cover, off of the road, and you roll up and you don't know where I'm at, and you see, and I was on your bike at the time, if you remember. And I was like, God, don't let that thing blow over right in front of me.
That's how bad it was.
I mean, and then you look over and you're like, what are you doing over there? And right at the time that
no, exactly. And this was kind of for us, again, it's our first time going and our first time being around bikers, and we're assuming that like all these bikers are big, tough, rough and tough guys. And I mean, some can be very intimidating. And we're sitting there like, okay, what are we going to do? This is crazy. And literally an RV on the opposite side of the highway, like the guy's honking and the guy waving like, hey, come here. We're like, huh? And so we're like, all right. So we leave our bikes over there and we cross this highway, and it's pouring rain. And the guy was like, hey, do you guys need some shelter? And we're like, sure. I mean, we're soaking wet. And I just thought that was like the coolest thing ever, because I'm not sure if I would invite two total strangers who are soaking wet into my RV. I'm just saying. I don't know.
Yeah, and it's like the biker community. I mean, they got the 1%er and all that kind of stuff. But, anybody that's on one, you just kind of, it doesn't matter. You collect together and, you have the same experiences. And we got in and he dried us off, and what was he, from Maryland or something? He
I think he was,
yeah. Wanted to see if we had anything to eat, if we're okay, and we're just like, no, we want to get the hell out of here.
But we hung out there for like an hour until it died down. I mean,
he wanted to drive us back to our place.
Yeah, exactly.
We don't have a place without the bikes,
But that was
it really muddy when we drove back? Do you remember? Do you remember going through the ship?
Well, it had to be like the campground part had to be, but the roads to get like to the certain sections, they were fine because they had the bikes. But like the people who were camping and stuff, yeah, they were screwed because that was just nasty.
Yeah,
that's just nasty. All right, look, man, this is I'm afraid I have to end it, but you got to promise me you're going to come back because I mean, I still want to talk about what you're doing now. I mean, your career in the pros. I mean, I got 1,000 other stories, but hopefully we didn't bore anybody. But it's hard trying to interview your best friend. And I think that we can come up with some cool stories, and I kind of just want to show a little bit about kind of who you were and how we want to becoming friends. And I think hopefully I was able to kind of show that.
Thank you very much. And I appreciate what you're doing with bringing the other Notre Dame guys in. We're really lucky with the Pat, Tony kind of Chicago clique, and that we got to somehow, after 15, 20 years outside of school, hang with guys that we went to school with. And, you guys have no problem saying the three of you have got an unbelievable reputation here in Chicago that paved some, got us into some places and such. And I don't mind riding the coattails of that and what have you. But I mean, so that's made it a lot easier, it's a lot when you've got access to stuff or do what have you. But ever since you called up and said, "Hey, I got the bike," the ideas that you come up with and the people and the glue and it stretches you out. But there's a great community up here that we've met through the motorcycles. And
absolutely. And I just wanted to kind of plug another thing that we did actually yesterday. For those folks who might not have seen it, NBC Sportsnet, they replayed the 1990 Orange Bowl. And it was kind of cool. And we were able to assemble a whole bunch of guys who played on the team together and kind of talk about it during the game. But I think initially the intention was, hey, let's talk about the game. But it was just kind of an organic thing. I think it kind of took on a mind of its own where, guys were sharing stories, but then, even though some of the guys may not have hung out together, they kind of all experienced the same thing. And so it became this kind of camaraderie thing where, hey, we were on the phone, we were on the Zoom for like an hour and a half, but it was almost like we were trying to catch up.
Right.
And, share a couple stories. I mean, some of the stories I didn't even hear of it. Anyway, it's really cool because I was able to record it. And for those folks who want to see it, they can just go to my YouTube page, which is at Chris Zorich 50, and they can check it out. It was really kind of a cool experience. And I mean, at one point, it was kind of a little emotional because we wound up talking about some guys who are no longer with us. And it's just an interesting kind of thing to witness. And initially it was, hey, let's get these guys to talk about the game. And, we had two groups. And, the first group, we looked at the game a little bit, but the second group, we didn't even know the game was over. We were still kind of talking. And it was just this great thing. So if you have a chance, again, just go to my YouTube page and you can check it out. And it was just this kind of amazing kind of organic thing with these guys kind of hanging out. And it's something I want to do again. I mean, I want to.
I hope you do. I mean, when you first introduced it, it's like, hey, this, absolutely, love to connect with all these kind of guys. And I was in the first group, and I thought the dynamics or things worked well. But you've got to remember, there was some unbelievable talent and personalities and such. I mean, you got a front man like Pat.
Right.
Pat is one of the best front men since Axl Rose. I mean, he understands. I mean, it's like a pleasure to be around that. And then, as an offensive lineman, to have a guy like Grooney that is not afraid of the bike and can tell the stories and kind of keep things going. And played for 10 years, and he's in Kansas City, so I can relate to some of the different things that he did. I loved it, and I hope everybody got at least had a little bit of fun out of it. But I'd do it again in a second.
Yeah, it's something we have to do again. I don't know if we're going to do that many people because I didn't have a chance. I don't think I was able to kind of give a lot of people.
Oh, you sucked. Everybody else was awesome.
Well, I want to be
your wife carried you with the AV and all that stuff.
Yeah, well, she's my producer, so I do want to obviously thank her. But Tim, again, man, this was a pleasure. I wish we had more time. You got to promise me to come back, and we'll pick up after our first Sturgis experience. So it will be after the first experience, after our first Sturgis experience on. So just kind of thinking some good stories that we had.
Hey man, I love you to death. There's no way I'm doing this again.
All right, man, I love you, man. Thank you very much. I hope you guys had a lot of fun. Again, kind of looking at maybe Tim Ryan, the Notre Dame football program, a little differently, kind of seeing beyond the helmet that these guys have worn. So, Tim, again, thank you very much. I love you, man. And I'm sure I'll be talking to you in a couple of minutes anyway. So.
All right, man. Good luck.
Right,
Thanks for having me. Thanks, Candy. See you guys. Take care.
All right. Bye-bye.
Later.